Big vibes, stay blessed and sailors. It's your boy Black Finesse. We're here for the last Mitsi video today. This is called The Race to the South Pole. Not too much to say after this one. Like I said, I don't really know what this one's about. I guess it's when they first ran into the South Pole, or first made their trip down south to where it was really cold. Let's get it. They basically physically.
The year is 1909.
Floated
and the
over
North
there.
Pole has just been discovered. The question of who first reached the North Pole is somewhat debated. Robert Peary and a guy named Frederick Cook both claim to be the first. Robert Peary was accompanied by an African-American explorer, so for no particular reason, let's just assume they reached the North Pole first. Sorry, Freddie, better luck next time. With that ticked off, the race to the south began. Different expedition groups started to prepare to reach the opposite side of the planet as fast as possible. In 1910, 2 ships were sailing south to start a land expedition with the ultimate goal of reaching the geographical South Pole.
1910.
One Norwegian team was led by the explorer Roald Amundsen, while the other British team was led by the explorer Robert Falcon Scott. The two characters could not be more different. Scott created a strong camaraderie and sense of loyalty among his men. Roald Amundsen, on the other hand, was less social, less agreeable, and less personally connected with other people. Although you could very well use these words to describe every Norwegian. Both ships reached the Ross ice shelf, with Amundsen arriving 10 days later than Scott. Amundsen unloaded a giant group of husky dogs that would help him cover huge distances, building multiple supply depots to prepare for the longest journey. The expedition crossed the Ross ice shelf, ascending the Transantarctic Mountains and eventually over the Antarctic Plateau towards the South Pole. Meanwhile, Scott was already busy unloading quite a lot of stuff to prepare.
How do you know
for
what
this
exactly the
expedition.
South Pole
For
is?
starters, he brought
Did
a
they
bunch
just
of
like
ponies.
set up
Regarded
a
because
spot?
Cute little ponies and
I don't think there was
extreme
really a
freezing
landmark to where
temperatures
they know
seem not
exactly
to
where
mix
it
very
is.
well. Next, he brought motorized sleds that didn't do any better. It also had something to do with the extreme temperature thing mentioned just earlier. Besides his petrol-powered circus entourage, Scott also brought some people highly experienced in the field of science. Amundsen decided to bring people who were more experienced in not freezing to death, while trying to get somewhere. At this point, I will let you decide which option sounds more logical.
Okay.
Oh, before I forget, the most logical thing is to join our Patreon or YouTube
Get your money, big dog. Get your money.
card, in which case, thank you, Dance. Check the links in the video description to become a member today. Now, let's get back to the story, shall we? After months of preparation, both teams set out into the vast expanse of snow and ice. With great determination, Scott and Amundsen were convinced they would be the one writing history by planting their country's flag at the southernmost point of the Earth. With his motorized sleds frozen solid and his ponies looking like ice sculptures, Scott and his companions continued the journey
basically had to
on
walk.
foot. On the 4th of December, they reached the Transantarctic Mountains. In front of them lay an enormous ice mass called the Beardmore Glacier.
Sheesh.
It would take the team more than 2 weeks to cross the entire glacier to the other side of the mountain range. Scott and his men were exhausted, but the hardest part of the journey seems to be over. Or
2
was it?
weeks? Where did they
Nevertheless,
sleep?
they found the strength to continue the journey towards the emptiness of the Antarctic Plateau. For hundreds of kilometers, the battered men plowed through snow, ice, and unforgiving blizzards.
I know they were
When the
freezing,
fog
dog.
finally faded, Scott's men noticed a square-shaped object on the horizon. As they got closer, the men were shocked. The square shape was a Norwegian flag raised 4 weeks earlier by Amundsen and his team.
Damn.
Scott realized Amundsen had beat him to it. He even left a letter for Scott, humbly asking him to inform his Norwegian king friend in case Amundsen's team did not make it back. A little side note here, this is 1912. Obviously, the rivalry between these two men was still subjected to a great sense of mutual respect. Can you imagine something like this happening today? If so, Scott would probably have found a letter saying something like, "Sup, Scott? Sorry if my Norwegian flag is in your way. Beep! Is it just me, or did your little expedition plan go south in more than one way? We are heading back ourselves so we can beat the winter as well. Good luck chilling over there. Your buddy in a rush, Amundsen." Scott and his 4 companions left the South Pole with an overwhelming feeling of emptiness,
Damn.
kind of like the view they were taking in while there. To get back to the ship, the group gathered its strength and headed back towards the Transantarctic Mountains. By now, the extreme elements were creeping in on the men. The elevation of 12,000 feet was causing high altitude sickness.
Ooh.
And the men were already exhausted when they reached the top of the Beardmore Glacier. Edgar Evans, one of the team members, was suffering from frostbite. By the time they reached the bottom of the glacier, Evans had become a walking corpse that later died, which doesn't make sense.
Froze to death.
He still did. Maybe Evans was the lucky one, considering the hellish conditions that were yet to bear down on the remaining men.
Yeah.
The temperatures started to drop, making the rough surface of the ice shelf very difficult to move through. Scott also counted on a favorable wind helping to push the sleds, but with an absolute absence of wind, well, again, a bummer. The distance covered on each day was now down to just 8 kilometers.
Damn, 8 kilometers a day?
A little bit of hope for the men was a planned rendezvous with dog teams from their ship, but for some spectacular lame reasons, they never arrived. One guy did not go because his friend was dying. Well, maybe that excuse is not so lame. But another guy did not go because he was unavailable for work, while another bloke was busy doing scientific research. Yep, priorities can be a bitch. At this point, Scott and the remaining team members knew the dog teams were not coming. Another member of the group, named Oates, knew he was slowing down the group with his hands and feet completely numb from the cold. In an ultimate display of self-sacrifice, he addressed his companions. "I'm just going outside, and maybe some time." If you don't follow, he basically said, "I'm going outside so I can freeze to death. You better get your asses moving if you're not a fan of doing the same." With increased speed, the 3 remaining men continued their journey. They covered 2,641 kilometers to the South Pole and back. Now it seemed the 3 men might survive this hellish expedition after all. Their only prepared supply point, 1-ton depot, was just 18 kilometers away. With the depot basically in sight, the men felt they had cheated death. Except Mother Nature doesn't like cheaters and decides to blast them with an intense blizzard.
Wow.
Now stuck in their tent with freezing temperatures and no food, death was imminent. In his diary, Scott wrote his last words. "I do not think we can hope for any better things now. We shall stick it out to the end, but we are getting weaker, of course, and the end cannot be far. It seems a pity, but I do not think I can write more. For God's sake, look after our people." So, to recap, you came to Antarctica on a ship loaded with stuff you didn't need. Then you plowed yourself through 1,500 kilometers of misery, only to find out someone beat you to it. On the way back, one of your friends collapsed, and another froze to death. Your other friends did not pick you up for some very lousy reasons, and finally you got stuck freezing in a tent with no food while being 18 kilometers away from rescue. Also, Scott must have been banging his head now Amundsen beat him to the end. Well, how did he do it? Amundsen brought 50 husky dogs with him that carried him all the way to the South Pole. While doing so, he ate some of his dogs, and the rest brought him and his men back safely. Or, in the words of Leonardo da Vinci, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication.
Well, they had bonds, like you said. When you have a good leader, people want to follow you. If you're being an a-hole, nobody wants to help you. Simple as that. That hurts.
Oh, before I forget,
that absolutely hurts. Absolutely hurts. This is why kindness is free. Being mean can cost you. So, make sure you comment, like, subscribe down below. It's your boy Black Finesse. We are out.